I think food is going to be one of the most controversial topics in the design of a space. How we deal with food. Because there's some foods I think it's worth it to just say, we don't have any of that kind of food here. And I grew up in a family that had rules about that. We didn't have any white sugar, it was against the rules. We didn't have any coffee, no alcohol. I kind of grew up thinking that people who drank alcohol and coffee were evil. I might have changed my mind on that. Although it's very clear we can use alcohol in bad ways or potentially good ways. And coffee, if it's from somewhere else, is another matter. I'd rather we grow it ourselves. In fact, any food on our food list of all the ingredients we have, we could look at, are we able to produce that ourselves, or are we able to find a supplier that has labor laws we like, that treats the earth right, that fits in with our values? Where does our chocolate come from? I'm pro-chocolate. Like, it's one of the only candies I think is actually good. Honey is like a candy in a way. The topic of candies is probably for another video. I don't have a sweet tooth myself because I grew up without sugar. So I didn't develop this addiction to sugar like other people do, have. I still eat candy sometimes. Like, I've bought a whole pack before and I've set it next to my computer, and every 5 minutes I'm eating another candy. And after the end of it, I think, why did I do that? I just dumped a bunch of crap food into my mouth, and of course a lot of food is contaminated shit. It's not even made of food. It has chemicals in it you've never heard of, some of which hurt you and they don't even know hurt you yet. Would like to eat less seafood because I want the oceans to restore themselves. So I would eat seafood at the coast, but I don't really want to eat a lot of it here. On the other hand, I just bought a can of tuna. Is that something we would allow or not? That's an entire conversation to have right there. Is the can useful for anything else? Yes, it is. Generally, tuna fish cans are really solid and useful for something or other. And if you had a bunch of that packaging, maybe it'd be useful for something else. Maybe you could put a bunch of tuna fish cans on something and have it act like a bird bath. It captures the rain and keeps it for longer. And so in the rainy season, it would work really well as a bird bath. Maybe, I haven't tried it. And it would dry out when it wasn't raining, so that you didn't have water that got moldy, contaminated, gross, and you didn't have mosquitoes growing in it. So maybe it's useful for that. I don't know what else you can use a tuna fish can for, but that's a question, is what can you use a tuna fish can for? What are all the ideas you have for what you can use a tuna fish can for? You could have them nailed to a surface and be able to dump things into them and, organize shit with it and have art supplies or things in your workshop with it. But does the tuna have mercury? Does it have a bunch of soy in it? A while ago they were selling tuna that was primarily soy. Well, why are we buying fake tuna? Now, on here it says free of soy on the packaging. It says it doesn't have soy in it. So if we did buy tuna, would it be in water or oil? I buy it in oil because I'm looking for as many calories as I can get, and I don't want to pay for water. I'd rather eat a little bit of oil since I don't use any oil in cooking anyway. And as far as food goes, you have to control your kitchen system and define what it is you want out of it, because I have had guests here who have made really crappy food. Really super carbohydrate filled everything. Not against carbohydrates. I want a system for bread baking and pasta making. But just everything they made, and it was a very fat person too, who was also annoying in some ways. Sorry, I have so much damage. I have so much personal damage from inviting so many people into my home. Even though 90% of them were lovely, everyone has a cost. And some of them have a higher cost than I feel like paying. In other words, there's a bunch of kinds of people I don't want in my life. And that whole rule set gets handled by filtering people better and making social agreements better ahead of time. But this woman kind of took over cooking for that particular building, which had people using it also. So she was cooking for like 8 or 10 people, and they loved her food, but it wasn't healthy food. I had different, a couple women came and in town, they bought just tons of prepackaged junk, and they brought it all in, and then they left all their wrappers and plastic shit as garbage for me. And that annoyed me on a couple levels. One, the very food that they're buying does not fit in with the food philosophy of the space. And two, they left their garbage there for me. And I can't use plastic shit like that for anything I can think of. I mean, I'd be willing to listen about that as well. But packaging really matters. Like, I bought instant coffee. Well, that's a sucky product. And the packaging for it was awesome. It's a really nice jar with a really big, thick, cool lid on it. So I was happy with the packaging. I wasn't happy with the product. Hopefully, whenever we buy a product, we're buying a product we can justify. In packaging, we can also justify, or in some cases accept as a necessary evil given that particular product's nature. It's a sensitive topic. I'm going to piss you off if I keep talking about food. Because if I had a list right now of all the ingredients that I use when there's people here, the list of ingredients I use when I'm here alone is a short list of not very healthy products. I eat like canned beans, canned refried beans. I eat dried pasta, which should have been fresh-made pasta, and it should have been from flour that was ground right before the pasta was made, and there could be a whole pasta making system. But I'm just one dude, and I'm not going to get up and make my own pasta all the time. It's not energy efficient. There is a right scale for every kind of food, how you deal with it. There's a right source for all of it. And individuals do vary in what foods they should eat. And we can talk about that. We can talk about food nutritional issues and which foods are toxic for which people. We could have whole, kitchens that don't have any peanuts at all because people have peanut allergies. People particularly have peanut allergies in places probably where they didn't play in the dirt enough when they were a kid. Like, why are peanut allergies suddenly a big thing when they didn't used to be a big thing? And that gets into the question of, in particular, and this is even more controversial because, boy, if there's kids involved, people get really upset about the details of everything. And my own family I came from was trying to feed me a certain diet. And so if I went to another place, hey, go on, get out. Get out. I don't trust my dogs. There's cats and stuff around here. When you talk about kids and food, you shut the fuck up. See, that rooster's trapped. I don't think it would crow as much if it wasn't trapped. I don't know, but it's bored. It's fine. It makes interesting background noise for you, but my roosters never crowed this much. It's because they had a huge area that they were in. So I talked earlier in a different video about animal abuse. And so food, of course, and how we deal with animals is also related, where we don't even want to support animal abuse off the property by buying animal products and bringing them in. We're responsible for that. If I buy industrial produced eggs of chickens who are in little cages, I am responsible for their suffering. So I'd like to have a really diverse diet, but I still want to consider the ecological costs of every kind of food we eat. For example, there's people around here who grow oats for animals as animal food. And then if I go to buy flaked oats, they come from like far, far, far away. And that means that energy was used to transport it to me. That energy goes into my cosmic karma of badness of how much energy I used, how much gasoline I burned to get the food to me. Which brings up the idea of eating locally. I'm not even sure I should record here. Shut up, fucker. He's not going to shut up because he's trapped in a cage. So adding up the ecological cost of everything on the menu and all of its ingredients is super important. And we could probably grow our own oats. Now, I have grown wheat and oats in little tiny spaces, but it wasn't enough to make it worth it to even harvest it and process it. And so it could be that we actually have entire fields, and there's some communally owned land nearby me, and we could contract with them to either grow them because they know how to, and then sell us the product. You know, like we'll figure out how to divide the oats from the oat stalks and all that, and not just have it be hay for animals. Or we could rent the fields and do that entire process ourselves, and perhaps even share with them what we're doing, how we take this food that's grown in a field, right, which is very non-biodiverse and generally not the way I want to do things. It's not food forest farming, right? That field is empty most of the year, doesn't have mycelia, doesn't have wildlife. It isn't really how I want to grow food in general. But we do like wheat, and it's one of the big grains, and we should evaluate every one of the big grains that's popular in the world. I don't think we're going to be doing rice here, but there is a lake nearby, and we could do rice experiments. You know, like, who's that guy? One Straw Revolution guy, Japanese, Fukuoka. Great book, One Straw Revolution, and he's got some other thoughts as well about how to grow rice in a better way. And so we could evaluate his work and say, well, what would it take for us to grow our own rice? Now, that doesn't come up in my mind as being high up on the list of important things, also because I don't eat a lot of rice. But rice is a big staple in the world. Corn is another one. How can we grow corn in a better way? I would actually like to collect every kind of different variation of corn that there is and have different stands of different corns and then cross-pollinate them as desired to make new corns, because corn didn't exist anyway. These are not natural plants. They come from genetic selection, which is not the same at all as genetic engineering. And a lot of dumb fucks, when they talk about GMOs, will try and say that those are the same thing, and they're just not at all. Natural selection, human-engineered selection, is totally different than gene splicing. Gene splicing takes DNA from a completely different organism, perhaps an animal, and they stick it into a plant, or a plant into an animal. And I'm not totally against that, actually, but if you're going to involve that in your food system in any way at all, then I'm probably very suspicious of it at best. And as soon as somebody owns that DNA, I'm totally against it. I am against intellectual property on DNA, especially for food. Now, if you want to make glowing fish or something, and you want to patent that, that's not a big threat to the things I'm talking about. And they do that, and I would like some glowing fish. And I want them in a big enough tank so that they're happy enough to reproduce, and I want to reproduce them even if the license says not to. So I'm not against maybe that there's a law owning that genome, but I'm also maybe willing to break that law. Shit, I shouldn't say that shit on video, should I? In general, everything I want to do is legal. I'll make a video, I guess, about why this is a slightly more secret channel than others.